Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are listening from and when you are listening. Welcome to Discover Together, the seventh episode of the incoming podcast. Without much ado, let's get down to business. To defeat the Huns. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. That's a Mulan reference. Anyway, so hot on the heels of types and shadows, which we were discussing on the last episode. I think what would be helpful, this may span a number of episodes, but I'm thinking that's fine. Because what we want to do is go through at a very, very high level, go through the whole of the Old Testament, and just discover why and how each book of the Bible is relevant to the person of Christ. So after we've done that, we would be focusing on some of the more specifics, story of Noah, story of Abraham, Lot, Jonah, all those things. But I think this is just to further embellish the train of thought that we put into action in the types and shadows bit. So, first of all, the first book of the Bible, Genesis. So, this book, as the name suggests, is the Genesis, the beginning, how it all started. Why is it important? Because Genesis sets the tone for the Bible, or for the gospel rather. So, Genesis tells us of the fall of Adam. And in the garden, after Adam falls, God tells, when God is addressing all the players in that incident, it tells the serpent about the seed of a woman who is going to crush his head. And now, I don't know how much you know about reproduction, but the woman doesn't have seed. The man has seed, and what the woman has are eggs. But there is a reason God specifically made reference to the seed of a woman. So that's talking about the virgin birth there. How there was a seed that is going to come from which the man has no impute. So that's why Jesus was born without a father, or without an earthly father, because he's God's seed. When Mary asked, how shall it be? He said, don't worry, the power of the Holy Spirit will overshadow you and you will conceive. So it was a supernatural process there. Now, not only that, the book of Genesis starts to unfold the plan of God. What do we mean? So it gets broad, right? We have Adam, representative of all of mankind. Sorry, excuse me. And then there's a genealogy in Genesis 5. And that genealogy starts to narrow down. So from Adam, you have Noah. After a number of genealogies anyway. And I think there are some very interesting points of view on those genealogies in Genesis 5 if you unravel the meaning of the names. I think it says something like, man has appointed unto himself mortal sorrow, but the great God shall come down teaching that his death shall bring eternal rest, or something along those lines. As if you unravel the names of the genealogy from Adam to Noah, Adam, of course, meaning man, Noah meaning rest. But again, I digress. So even in those genealogies, you can see the plan of the gospel being unfolded there. Anyway, so from Adam, it narrows down to Noah. From Noah goes to Abraham. And note, when I'm saying narrows down or goes to, there are people within them. I'm not saying Abraham was the son of Noah. Of course, he's the son of Terah. And Noah, son of, I think, Lamech or so, son of Methuselah and all of that. So, of course, there are people there, but I'm just paraphrasing. So, from Noah, we go to Abraham. And then God cuts a covenant with Abraham and promises Abraham that in his seed will all the nations of the earth be blessed. So from this time, around Genesis 12-ish, Genesis 12 to be specific, because the promise was made, Genesis 12, 1 to 3. But around there, the focus now starts to zoom in on Abraham's seed. And who are Abraham's seed? The children of Israel. Because from Abraham you have Isaac, you have Jacob, you have the 12 children who became the 12 tribes of Israel. And then from there you have Joseph. And where Genesis ends is Joseph's children going into Egypt because of the famine. So what started from Adam and mankind in the beginning of Genesis, at the end of Genesis, is beginning to slowly zoom into the people of Israel. And that sets the context for the entirety of the other books. So in the book of Exodus, for example, what do we see? The book of Exodus is the people of Israel exiting Egypt. God bringing them out of Egypt, delivering them out of slavery. And he now establishes laws for them. So, note in Exodus, because in Genesis, I strongly believe is Genesis 15, God promises Abraham that he will bring his seed to a land. The promise was, go to a land I will show you. And then at some point in Genesis 18, God told Abraham that as far as your eyes can see, I will give you the land, all you can see. So, Exodus now marks the beginning from the, pun intended, exodus of Israel from Egypt and their migration to a promised land. So that's all Exodus to Deuteronomy is about. So in that journey, God is giving them laws that, look, when you come to this land, you do this, you don't do this, you do this, you don't do that, you don't do that, you don't do that, you have to do this. And God is telling them this because, again, I'm a bit conflicted. I don't know how much I want to go into now, but the reason God was making that clear to them is that the people who they were evicting from this land were guilty of the things which he was telling them not to do. And he was telling them, look, if you indulge in these things, I will have to judge you the way I judged them. So, Exodus to Numbers, we have that journey in the journey to the promised land. And then obviously, Moses missed the mark at some point, so Joshua had to take over. Now, in the book of Joshua, we see Israel finally getting to the promised land. And the promised land, they had to take possession of it by evicting people who were there by the help of God. Because obviously, the people who were there were sinning against God. Because in Genesis 15, God told Abraham when he was promising him that land, he said, look, the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So we can see God had, it was not just a random act that God was having a mood swing and says, go and kill all these people. No. He said their iniquity was not yet full. So he was monitoring that iniquity. Now, we are still focusing on Israel. Joshua, they get into the promised land. After Joshua, the death of Joshua, we begin to have judges in Israel. So, and the pattern was that, look, a judge will rise up, or the people of Israel would sin. God would deliver them up to their enemies. Then they would cry out to God for help. God would anoint somebody. That person will go deliver them from the hands of their enemies. Then they serve God. And then they drift from God again. And then God will deliver them to the hands of their enemies. They cry out to God. God will anoint somebody. That person goes, delivers them from their enemies. They serve God. And then they drift from him again. And that pattern kept on emerging throughout the Old Testament, not just in the time of the judges. Now, from the book of Ruth, something starts to happen, because Ruth, the first chapter of Ruth, it says, in the time of the judges, there was a woman called Ruth. So why is the story of Ruth ripped out from the time of the judges? Why is that story ripped out from the time of the judges? And it is because Ruth would become the great grandmother of David. And Jesus would come from the lineage of David. So the book of Ruth is actually a setup for 1st and 2nd Samuel. Well, for Samuel and the kings anyway. Because we don't meet David until Samuel. But where is David coming from? Lineage of Ruth. Because Ruth begat Obed, Obed begat Jesse, Jesse begat David. Jesse begat David. So the book of 1st Samuel. Now, mind you, we've gone from Adam to just Israel at this point. We are still focusing on Israel now. Even if Ruth has kind of become an outlier by focusing us more specifically on David. But that's fine. We've come back to Israel again. So what happened in 1st Samuel is the Israelites were sick of, being judged by Samuel's sons. And they said, look, appoint us a king. And interestingly, and that's just testimony to the amazing clairvoyance of God, God predicted this, even their specific reasons for asking for a king. God said, look, when the time comes, I believe it's in Deuteronomy 18 and 17 to 19. Deuteronomy chapter 17, 18 and 19. I think one of those three, or a combination of all of them. God predicted that, look, a time will come when you will say, we want to be like other nations. Give us a king that will lead us out the way other nations were leading us. And when that time comes, these are the rules the king should follow. So in 1st Samuel, specifically, I think, 1st Samuel 8, that came to pass. And they told Samuel, we want a king like other nations. So Samuel gave them Saul. Saul failed. And then God chose David. And then literally half of the book of 1st Samuel, from around 15, around from 16 to 30. You know, First Samuel is all about David. You know how he was escaping from Saul, how he slayed Goliath, all of that. And it was all David until the death of Saul in 1 Samuel 31, I think. In 2 Samuel, David finally becomes king. And what happens as David is king? God makes a promise to him that he will raise up a king to sit on his throne, and that he will never lack a man to sit on his throne, that he will establish his throne forever. Let's see if we can quickly locate that promise. I believe it's 2 Samuel 7:14 off the top of my head. 2 Samuel 7, and we start from, let's start from 12. Well, for context, let's start from 8. 2 Samuel 7:8, just for context. Now, therefore, this is God telling Nathan what to say to David, because David thought of building him a house. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I took you from the sheepfold, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people, over Israel, and I have been with you wherever you have gone, and have cut off all your enemies from before you, and have made you a great name, like the name of the great men who are on the earth. Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in a place of their own and move no more. Nor shall the sons of wickedness oppress them anymore, as previously, since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and have caused you to rest from all your enemies. Also, the Lord tells you that he will make you a house. Verse 12, when your days are fulfilled and you rest with your fathers, I will set up your seed after you, who will come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. If he commits iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men, and with the blows of the Son of Man. But my mercy shall not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I removed from before you. And your house and your kingdom shall be established forever before you. Your throne shall be established forever. So God promised David an everlasting throne. And this is going to be very important. Very, very important. And we will pick up here in the next episode. See you then.